Ma'am, you can't go in there. This is a crime scene.
Abigail!
I warned you, ma'am.
That is my friend, Abigail Prescott.
There's no Abigail Prescott on the hotel register.
Well, that's her name. I'm her doctor, Julia Ogden. We stayed in the hotel last night. I need to examine her.
You're a doctor. Well, we found an empty vial of laudanum. It appears your patient overdosed.
Overdosed? That's impossible.
I suggest you review your pharmacopoeia, doctor. She's dead. Constable, escort Dr. Ogden to the station house. You need to answer some questions.
William.
You've got 15 minutes.
I don't know how this happened.
Clearly, you should not have ventured out hatless. It's all right. We'll sort this out. Together.
10 times the dosage?
Is it possible you miscalculated?
Absolutely not. I would never make such an egregious error. There must be something else.
Could foul play have been involved?
I just don't see how. We were so vigilant in covering our tracks. William, all she wanted was to be free. And I failed her.
This is not your fault. Think, Julia.
I haven't stopped thinking since I saw her dead body in that hotel room. I just can't conceive how this could have happened.
Is it possible that Mrs. Prescott committed suicide?
I don't see how. I left her with a single vial of laudanum. When I went to get the tickets, that's not enough to cause harm.
And you're certain it was the correct dosage?
Yes, of course.
Any news?
Regrettably, no. Scoured the police files, but I found nothing to help our case.
I'll double check them.
And together we'll triple check them. Don't lose hope, Julia. Did anyone know you were staying at the hotel with Abigail?
Not a soul. We even registered under false names. Perhaps I did make a mistake. What if I grabbed the wrong dilution from the clinic? What if I did kill her?
Worst case, it would be considered an accident, correct?
In the absence of any alternate explanation of how this happened, we will have to appeal to the hearts and minds of the jury. The Crown will try to paint you as a radical zealot, an unhinged kidnapper. But as your attorney, I will provide them with the true measure of Dr. Julia Ogden, a brilliant hero who would risk anything to rescue a woman from a life of abuse.
You were only trying to help her. The jury will see that.
Did you notice anything unusual about the two women during their stay at your hotel?
Nothing especially. Except they used fake names. And the one lady did all of the talking.
Which lady?
That one there. The killer.
My lord, I object to this speculation. My client has not been found guilty.
Sustained. The jury will ignore this accusation.
Well, after we received the call at the station, we arrived on the scene to find the victim deceased. Shortly after, the defendant appeared.
And what was your initial impression of Dr. Ogden?
At the time, she appeared somewhat bedraggled, and she seemed confused and agitated.
And what were the coroner's findings?
The coroner's report described a massive amount of laudanum in the victim's body.
Now, can you read aloud, please, for the jury? This section of the report here.
It is this coroner's opinion that the administration of this massive overdose of laudanum was either an act of gross negligence or a deliberate attempt to harm the victim.
And is it true you were unable to find a single other suspect in the death of Mrs. Prescott?
That is true.
In fact, by the defendant's own admission, no one else knew where they were. Correct?
Correct.
Julia Ogden claims she was your wife's physician.
I'm sure Julia Ogden would claim she was the Queen of England if that lie somehow served her purposes. She's been a thorn in my family's side, desperate to drag my dear Abigail from her loving marriage and into a life of extreme feminist beliefs.
Objection, Your Honor. The witness cannot claim knowledge to the inner workings of my client's mind.
It is as obvious as the nose on my face that Julia Ogden is a zealot, intent on destroying the very foundations upon which our society is built.
Sustained. Alderman Prescott, I'll ask you to refrain from further outbursts.
Yes, Your Honor.
You have heard from Alderman Prescott about the alleged character of Dr. Julia Ogden. I am here to tell you that his description is the slanderous fabrication of a man who seeks to conceal his own culpability. Dr. Ogden is no zealot. Her actions are driven by prudence, intellect, and compassion. Throughout her career, she has fought to better the lives of women, especially women like Abigail, who was powerless against her abusive husband.
My lord, I must object. Alderman Prescott is not on trial here, and there's been no proof that he's ever been anything but a loving husband and a diligent provider.
Sustained.
Very well. I will let Dr. Ogden's brilliance and eloquence dispute the alderman's claims of her. I call Dr. Julia Ogden to the stand. Dr. Ogden, please recount for the jury the history of your relationship with Abigail Prescott.
A few months ago, Mrs. Prescott came into my care covered in bruises, which were clearly the result of a brutal assault.
And who was her assailant?
She told me it was her husband, Alderman Prescott, who was later imprisoned for other misdeeds.
My lord, again, I object.
My lord, as you and my learned friend are aware, the alderman's sentencing and conviction are a matter of public record.
And it is not relevant here. Continue your testimony, Dr. Ogden.
When the alderman was released from his sentence, Mrs. Prescott returned to the clinic, this time with a fractured wrist. It was obvious that the abuse was escalating. Alderman Prescott arrived and removed her from my care before I was able to properly treat her wrist.
And what happened next?
Abigail asked me to meet with her. But when she didn't show up at the designated time, I proceeded to their home, where I discovered that her husband had made arrangements to have her committed to the Andrew Mercer Reformatory for Women.
And how did you respond to that?
I offered to take her away. That reformatory is unfit for human habitation.
At least she would still be alive there.
Oh, spare us. You are a monster.
Silence. Any further outbursts and you will be removed.
Dr. Ogden, you were caring for Abigail's fractured wrist all this time.
Yes, she was in a great deal of pain.
And laudanum's an extremely powerful pain reducer?
Yes, it is. When used judiciously, it's...
Would you call 10 times the recommended dosage judicious?
Well, of course not, but I didn't give her that dosage.
Are you sure?
Yes.
How can you be sure?
Well, I...
You're not sure, are you?
Yes, I am.
Oh, are you saying you're infallible?
No, I'm...
So you admit you're capable of making mistakes?
Well, yes.
It's possible you gave her the wrong bottle, isn't it, Dr. Ogden? In the absence of any other explanation, is it not most likely that Abigail Prescott died because you provided her with the wrong bottle of laudanum?
Answer the question, Doctor.
Yes, it's possible.
Julia Ogden knew that Abigail Prescott was due to be admitted to the Andrew Mercer Reformatory for Women, a place where she would have been cared for, where she would have been safe. Instead, she trusted this charlatan with disastrous consequences. Dr. Julia Ogden is solely responsible in the death of Abigail Prescott, and her misguided arrogance would surely benefit from the correction a lengthy stint in prison would provide.
Thank you. The jury will now be dismissed to deliberate. I'll expect your decision by tomorrow. A new disclosure after the jury has gone to deliberation, this is highly irregular. Furthermore, the fact that Abigail Prescott made a phone call seems irrelevant.
Don't you see? Someone removed a page from Inspector McRae's report precisely because the telephone call is relevant.
Detective Murdoch, you are overstepping your bounds.
Respectfully, Your Honor, Detective Murdoch has a point. My report contains several pages, and one was missing when it was turned over to the defense. It's rather suspicious.
Your Honor, surely you can understand the detective's desire to see justice served. If Abigail Prescott made a phone call in the middle of the night, whoever she called could have tracked her down and administered the fatal dose while Dr. Ogden was away.
Nonsense. If Mrs. Prescott was secretly making phone calls in the dead of night, she was likely calling for help to be released from the clutches of Dr. Ogden.
Oh, please, the missing page!
This is your second warning, Detective.
Your Honor, I do submit that the missing page is worthy of further scrutiny.
I have no knowledge of this missing page, and my colleagues' insinuations are verging on slander.
Let's not resort to histrionics. At any rate, I remain unconvinced that this alleged phone call has any bearing on the case. We'll proceed with the jury's verdict.
I'm so scared. What if they find me guilty?
They won't.
They might.
Keep your mind on the future. All of those beautiful eventualities.
Such as?
Susanna's first words. Her first steps with those plump little legs. I can picture her first bicycle ride. We'll share all of those moments together. You are innocent, Julia. And I won't rest until the world knows it.
The jury is ready with the verdict.
Thank you. Julia Ogden, please stand. The jury has found you guilty of manslaughter in the death of Abigail Prescott.
No!
You are hereby sentenced to 3 years in prison.
3 years? This is ridiculous! We demand a new trial. What about the telephone call? If you just allow me to investigate...
Detective Murdoch, sit down. Bailiff, take Mrs. Murdoch away.
Her name is Dr. Julia Ogden.